Oh, girlies, lucky bloody here. Hello, everyone. Hello, girlies. Hello, girly pops. Hello, guys and gals. Well, if you are watching right now on the video pod, whether it's on YouTube or you're on the Spotify video, just look what your gals purchased. Wow! Oh, it's an exciting, thrilling time to be on the Weekly Wigz podcast because your gal has upgraded. Upgrade you. Up, can I up? Partner, let me upgrade you. Wow! Sorry. Hey, this is a celebratory cause, guys, because she's upgraded the equipment. Look at my shiny new mic, which I'm hoping sounds great in your ears. I've just done a few tests. I've done a few listen backs and a bit of editing on it. It sounds pretty good. It'll be interesting, actually, to sort of compare and contrast from the previous mic, because I just got to... Just 1 second. We simply do just have to shout out. I'm showing it on the screen here. Our trusty original origin microphone for the Weekly Wigz. This cost me about £30 on Amazon. I think the brand is called Zeal Sound, Z-E-A-L. Honest to God, for 30 quid, I really think this did me very well. It served me for about 28 episodes, and as you will have heard last week on my sort of update, I think I'd gone into the fact that your gal had finally received, first time in her life in my content creation world and being online for a good few years, my first ever paid brand deal, if that's what you want to call it. It was nothing too major, but it was certainly nothing to sniff at. I had £100 Amazon gift voucher for making a little TikTok, and I reinvested that Amazon voucher back into the Weekly Wigz pod. And I was like, girlies, it is time for a nice little setup. So not only do I have a nice new mic here, which you can see, this is a Rode microphone, a Rode pod mic, which Rode is like a good industry standard company for microphones. If you're ever into your tech, they're pretty damn good. Obviously, this 30 quid mic really did like very similar, but I just think sometimes it's worth upgrading your audio quality, because if you're a bit of a audio tech nerd like me, you can sometimes notice those differences. So RIP my little girly over here, Miss Zeal Sound. Thank you for your services. You will always be here as a backup mic and potentially a guest mic if I ever have guests in person, even though this is literally like my awkward little setup on my desk. Don't get me wrong, I've still got stacks of paper and printer and books holding up this laptop camera. That's something I would love to resolve in the future. I was actually having a little nose at like Insta360 webcam things. I was like, oh, that would be great, because I could just perch that up onto the screen on my actual monitor that I've got behind here. I wouldn't have to stack up my actual MacBook. I don't know. It's a thought. It's for the future. But of course, those cameras cost a good few £100. So, you know, if your gal gets a few more little sponsorship deals, which I hope I do, send them my way. Creative agencies, I'm here, I'm active, I'm ready. Then I could upgrade that situation too. And then that honestly just makes my setup easier every time I come to record, because I'm not going to lie, it is quite a faff, like getting all the things plugged in, the faff of stacking up, literally, I think I've shown a video of this in the past when I did my inaugural episode. I'm going to take a new video and just insert it on the screen here. I actually had to increase the stacks and layer it today just because I wanted to like have a little experiment with the lighting. It's literally my printer, an Imperial War Museum book that I am yet to finish, my MacBook Air box for the laptop, another random cardboard box, my Julie Andrews memoir book. I'm sorry, Julie Andrews. I am using you for podcast purposes, but love you, girl. Then a bunch of like printer paper, and then the laptop. And then I've kind of got my little ring light just dangling off the side, which also, that is another thing I would like to invest in, is a bigger, better ring light that is more adjustable. Again, we need the money for that. Anyway, it's a whole shebang, but it's progress and small steps, and I'm very thrilled about it. I've also got this audio interface. I'm not going to lie. Do I think it's going to make any difference? I don't know. This is just kind of what the industry standard is. It's basically just like a little interface that you plugs through. It's all really boring. But this particular mic, like this last one, my dear little Zeal Sound, was like a USB mic, so quite a simple USB input. Whereas these ones are a little bit more professional, and they have something called an XLR input, which is Again, so boring, but it requires you to plug that through an interface where you can sort of manage the controls and the volume a bit better, and then that plugs into the laptop. So it's a whole thing, it's a whole setup. And then finally, oh my God, my favourite thing, aside from this beautiful mic, is the podcast arm, which I can't fully move this or get the video, but I did take a picture of it when I first set it up, so I'll pop them up here. It is one of those amazing little arm things that you just screw onto like your desk or whatever, and it's movable. Maybe I can move it a little bit here. Like, it goes up and down. Oh, hang on. Don't want to mess up my little position here. Okay, I think we're back in position. Yeah, so it's just, again, that eliminates one act of stacking up 1,000 books just to put my last mic on, because I didn't have like a stand arm thing. So, she's upgraded, living the life. And yeah, the goal is in the future we will have bigger ring light, better lighting. Although I will say, again, this was like a really cheap 20 quid small ring light on Amazon. It's not bad. It's not bad. I just need to get one that like tilts up higher, because I do kind of hate that you see like the ring light in my glasses reflection sometimes. And I think there's a way I can avoid that. But stay tuned for that in future. I'll get a fancy new webcam thing which eliminates all my stacking of things. And then I'll just have the nicest, cleanest setup. I can't bloody wait. But you know what? For now, it does the trick. And I'm buzzing. I'm absolutely buzzing. I love this, like, I don't know, it's just so much easier. I love it. So starting off on exciting, positive vibes, and we're just off the back, we're coming to the end of the heat wave that we just had in the UK. Oh my word. So where do we start, girlies? I mean, let's just have a little life catch up. First of all, how the devil are you? I hope you've had a lovely week. I wasn't here, obviously, the last week. I had a week off because of the bank holiday. I was travelling to see my family. I couldn't get a pod done that week, so that's why we are a week delayed and we had a week off. But the actual bank holiday was lovely. I'm not gonna lie, it started off a bit ropey. Your girl had, I was just having a stressful time in work as ever. And, work's just busy and stressful and all of the things. Won't get into all the details there. But, when you're just trying to like live your life and you just want to sign off for the weekend, get the out of office on, everyone knows the bank holiday's coming up, yada, yada. And I was just like in a bit of a rush. I had to go get a train after work. And I just felt so flustered in general, just focusing on getting to my damn train. So I wasn't in the best mood. I get to the train station. It's a packed tram ride there I have to go on a tram from my house up to the train station, which is about 20-30 minutes. It's a journey that I'm very used to doing. I love the tram. I always rave about the tram in Manchester. It's a great system. But I'm not going to lie, it was a bit rammed. It was rush hour. Probably didn't time that the best, but it was busy. I had my suitcase. I was just not in the mood. I was like, girlies, I just want to sit on this air-conditioned train for the next 3.5 hours and switch off and get home to Wales to see my family. So I finally get to the train station. It's obviously a bit round at the train station. It ends up just being a bit more of a rush than I liked it to be. I needed to like grab a snack for the train. I was like trying to quickly use my time to do that, because my biggest priority, to be honest, when it comes to getting my train home is because Manchester down to Wales, Manchester is like the starting point of the train journey, which is really great in my experience, because it just means that like you get on the train first. You don't necessarily have to fight for a seat, which is obviously important when you're on a 3.5 hour journey. I'm not going to bloody stand for the old time. And it's one of those train routes where quite often at Manchester, the trains will be there like a little bit earlier, like 10 or 15 minutes early. So I always aim for the early time where it actually arrives, because you just get like better options of seats. I've got my routine down. Like I take this journey very frequently to go home and visit my family. Like I go at least once a month. And I've got my setup to a T now. I usually know exactly how many coaches there's going to be. Like, you know me, I'm such a planner. I'm locking in the best spot. And sometimes there are some good spots on the trains, because it's like, I want to just be like close enough to the toilet, but not like right next to it, because it's like doors going all the time. A little bit close to the bin area, because I'll definitely have some snacks. I want to get rid of my shit. Because sometimes on like the trains get a little bit busy, or you're like really far down the carriage. It's just like irritating having to like squeeze through the people. So I always try and tactfully select my area well. Anyway, so I get there for the early time. I'm still a bit tired and flustered at this point, but I'm just ready to be on this train. I step on the train, literally 0.5 seconds. I go to my spot. I'm like, yes. And to be fair, at this point, there's actually not that many people that are getting on the train, because most people don't know that it comes early. So I'm taking my time. I'm trying to just calm down from my earlier fluster. I step on the train. I get the little seat that's like right by the corner by the door. I go to pick up my little suitcase, which I have to put on the overhead rack. I was in the middle of doing that, and do you know what, like, really irritates me? When people are coming through a train, right? Number one, the train's not going anywhere for another 10 plus minutes. If you're that desperate to go to, like, a certain place, you can't actually just easily get off the train and go straight up the platform and pass me. Like, I would personally do that. And this man, this middle-aged man, who's probably in his 40s, it just comes, like, right into my personal space. You know how, like, people do that on airlines when you're up in the air and say, like, the cabin crew are doing the trolley service or someone's trying to get to the toilet. And instead of just, like, being patient or maybe just waiting a minute for them to finish what they're doing, they always have to, like, squeeze in and, like, be in people's space, and that shit really irritates me. So anyway, I carry on with my life because I'm just like, sir, you respectfully can just wait like 2 seconds while I just lift my suitcase up. I mean, a normal gentleman would offer to be like, do you need any help, madam? Of course he doesn't. And he's just like up in my space and being so impatient. I'm just like, I'm not like moving right this second for you. I can see I'm doing something. There's no urgency. Also, like at this point, there's like 1,000 bloody seats to choose from. And of course, he has to go past me to get to the net. It's just like, I was already at the back carriage anyway. There was only maybe like 5 more rows of seats behind me versus the other 4 carriages before him. But I digress. And I'm not being a knob. I'm not like going slower just to piss him off. I'm just literally doing my thing. I lift it up. I grab my bag to go scoot into the seat to get out of his way. And he walks past me and mutters under his breath, "Thank you." Oh, girlies. I literally wanted to batter this man. I was not in a good state. I was fragile already, okay? And you know when you're just like having a bit of a bad week or a bad day, and it's just the smallest thing that tips you over the edge. And that really did it for me in that moment. I sat down so angry. I did kind of sarcastically say, "Thank you," back to him as if to say, "What's your fucking problem, bitch?" And he obviously just ignored me because he had his earphones in and he wasn't paying attention. But I just thought the absolute nerve of this man. And it just really annoyed me and really upset me in that moment. And I just had like a bit of a mini cry come out at that point. I was like, oh no. I'm like crying on the train. And then this is when people start piling on and I'm just trying to not be seen crying. I'm there with my bloody spinach and feta cheese roll that I just picked up in Sainsbury's, trying to like pretend like I'm eating it and everything's fine. Meanwhile, there's just like tears rolling down my face. Oh, girlies, I was in a bit of a state. I was like, I haven't got the energy for this. Like, just leave me alone. There's no need in this life for this passive aggressive energy. And I'll be honest, there's nothing more in life that really insults me more when people put out their passive aggressiveness on you. Like, I can be moody, okay? We can all have our moods. I can have resting bitch face. Sometimes we can all be a little bit snappy here and there, but like, maybe it's just me personally, but I would never choose to take that out on someone unless unless you're in a situation where someone's genuinely done something wrong, then maybe you want to be like, hey, that's like not acceptable. And even then, half the time, who can be asked? Like, we're all struggling out here. Let's just move on, be patient and get on with it. Like, there was just no need for that man to give me that energy. And I was so fuming. I was like, I just want to enjoy my weekend. So it started off poor and it was also pretty warm. This is kind of when like the heat wave was starting. It wasn't quite at its peak, but it was pretty warm and kind of like humid at that time of day. And then I come to find out that the carriage I'm in, the aircon broke and everyone was dying in the carriage. And I thankfully had my little portable fan, which was like basically blowing hot air on me, but it was better than nothing. But because it was so rammed at that time and it was rush hour and most people get off at the earlier stops, it was like, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we're sorry for the inconvenience, but the carriage at the back has got a broken aircon unit. So if you do want to move further into the rest of the carriage, you can find the aircon there. And I was just like, girl, I am not picking up my suitcase and all this shit and traipsing through all these people to try and get to a bit of aircon. So I had to just be patient and wait for more people to get off before I could do that. So I'm like, just tears dried up. I'm boiling hot. Got this sad little piddly fan on me. I'm tired, I'm stressed, and I'm just like, get me home, get me home. And then the most annoying thing was they do this really annoying thing sometimes at Transport for Wales, forever going to call you out on your shit. What is it with train companies? By the way, this is going to lead us into a little segment today. As you might already tell by my energy, we're going to bring in Rant Corner to the game today, okay? You know we have Politics Corner, Culture Corner. We're sprinkling Rant Corner as a new segment, I think, from time to time, when it's worthy. So Transport for Wales does have this habit of just like randomly stopping the service at a certain stop and then switching the trains. with like no prior notice. They don't tell you this in advance. They never say it on the signs. It never says it on the trains. And some of their trains have got the worst tannoy system, so you just don't hear what they're saying anyway. And I'm usually good at like paying attention. I know some people have earphones in and all the rest of it, but it's like we were getting to Cardiff basically, and then I had to go on a stop from Cardiff. We're just sat there at Cardiff station, kind of like sitting like lemons for a good 5 minutes or so, and I'm thinking, why is the train not moving on? Then, of course, rocks on a man in a high vis going, is anyone trying to get on to further stops? I was like, yeah. Oh, you need to go over to platform 3, the switching carriages. I was like, oh, cool, thanks, hen. Could have told us that at the tannoy, cool. So then you have to get your suitcases and your bags and pack up your shit. And then annoyingly, you have to like change, because a lot of platforms at Cardiff train stations, you have to like go down the steps and then go back up the steps into the subway. It's a whole thing. Anyway, so I'm doing that. I get onto the next thing. And then I see there's like 2 trains. My train is behind this other train. It's all very confusing because you're like, where's my train, bitch? And then I'm looking at the clock and I can see my train is literally about to depart in like 20 seconds. And I was like, whoa! So I'm like running down the fucking platform. You know that moment where the conductor's got the whistle and he's like, ready to go? And I'm like, you gotta be joking me! And then, of course, to add to insult, finally get on the train, out of breath, carrying all my shit. Not only did I nearly miss the connecting train, which really would have fucked me off, I would have been waiting so much longer to get home then, which is actually so unacceptable for a train company to do that. But then the nice 4 to 5 carriage train that we were just on turned into a 2 carriage train. Of course it does! And, you know, luckily for me, I only had to go like 1 stop, so I can cope. But I do think that is crazy work how they do that. Like the journey that I take, right, it goes all the way from Manchester all the way over to West Wales. That's usually the straight through route. It's a really, really long route. Probably if you literally went from start to finish, it would take like 6 hours. So you need like a modern, comfy, big train for that. And how they justify just cutting down to a 2 carriage train all of a sudden, which is rammed as well. And it's just like, what do you mean you just get to do that with like no notice and everyone just has to pay the cost for it? Everyone was pretty irked. There's no room for your luggage. All the racks are full. It was just like, oh my God. And then the worst thing, oh God, and this really does lead us into rant corner, okay? I mean, oh my God, I'm kind of giggling about it now. It was quite funny, but in the moment, I was like, girl, this has just been a long day. I'm sat next to this really Welsh woman from like Neath or something. She's like, the Welsh, yes, the Welsh. She's like proper, like telling me her life story. She's telling me about her husband who's 60 and he's on his way to retirement, but he's worked for this company for 30 years and they've just put him on a pip they have and he's really down. It's like, this is, you know, you're back in Wales when all of a sudden some random person literally just starts sharing their life story with you like they've known you for 20 years. And that is what I do love about the Welsh people. It's so communal, shall we say. But maybe a bit too communal, because let me tell you, there was another man then about 4 seats down or 2 rows down playing his videos out loud on his phone. I mean, honest to God, what has happened to social etiquette? The normalization of the amount of people, not just on trains, on trams, everywhere you go, just in, I don't know, say you're like in a coffee shop or you're in a queue or something, people just blasting TikToks, YouTube, music out for everyone else to hear. It's like, girl, it's called headphones. They've been invented for a reason. And I'm not gonna lie, it is one of my biggest irks in life. It really grinds my gears. Because it's just so rude. Like, nobody wants to listen to your shit. Have a bit of social awareness, a bit of etiquette. You just wouldn't do that like anywhere else, would you? But people just, for some reason, think it's acceptable to do so. Because there's no consequences. And this man is just at like the highest volume. And it's like everyone's just like doing the thing where they're looking at each other like, is he for real? And no one obviously wants to say anything. And the sad thing is, the problem is no one can really say anything anymore because the world is so fragile and you kind of just don't know what you're dealing with a lot of times. You could have a go at someone, or not even have a go at them. You could just politely ask them, excuse me, sir, like, do you mind putting your earphones in? Because we can all hear your fucking video. Like, he could have a knife on him. He could stab you. Like, this is really like the circumstances we're playing with these days. So nobody ever wants to say anything from like fear of confrontation or someone getting into a fight on a train. And so we all just have to sit by and let it be, which is so unacceptable. And I'm not joking you, right? This man, he was watching all sorts of random stuff. At one point, I could hear like James Bond theme music. I was like, is he watching a James Bond film? Like, what the hell's going on? And then just shortly before I was due to get off my stop, he starts was playing a video out loud on, I'm not joking you, like, it was so loud. And I just need to preface, like, this wasn't a prank. This wasn't like a young guy. You know what teens are like? Sometimes they'll do this because they think like, oh, no, this was like an old man, like probably in his 60s. He looked just like a regular family man with like his wife or something. He was playing out loud on full blast a video about erectile dysfunction. like a infomercial, like some kind of scientific information video about this is what erectile dysfunction does. And I was like, everyone was giggling. I mean, lots of the young people were obviously just like, ah! But it was just like so weird. I was like, this is embarrassing behaviour. I was like, get me off this train, get me off this train. So, bloody hell, safe to say, my beef with trains and then on the way back, when I was coming back from my bank hauls, the heat wave then caused a major delay on my service. I was basically travelling for about 6 hours, which is double the time it usually takes. I was sweating, it was a whole thing, got back very late. Anyway, fuck Transport for Wales, respectfully. Give me that delay repay. Screw these people with no etiquette, because what is wrong with you? Oh, and also another example. Again, this isn't necessarily just things about like people, phones and headphones. This is just general social awareness, right? Because another example that happened recently, a few weeks ago, I went to go see that Michael Jackson film in the cinemas. Pretty good film, by the way. I'm sat there in my view recliner seat. This family of 3 comes in, right? It's like a grandmother and what I can only assume to be 2 grandchildren. But when I say I'm talking like grown adults here, okay? The grandmother was probably in her 70s. The grandkids, or maybe it was even kids, I'm not sure. They were maybe mid-20s, maybe low-key even in their 30s. So they're grown enough adults to know what's right and wrong. Of course, they're the type of people that come in right after the film has started too. So you know that's a bad sign when someone arrives late and then they have to do the shuffle in front of you. And they were, of course, sat right next to me. And I was like, just trying to watch the film, don't mind me. Anyway, it happens. Usually you just let that shit slide. You're like, okay, a little bit late, they just whatever, it's fine. And then they literally, the grandmother and the so next to me was the granddaughter. I'm just again assuming they're grandchildren. Let's just say they are. Granddaughter, next to her the grandson, maybe they're siblings or whatever. Then next to the grandson is the gran. And I don't even know what they were arguing about, but they turned into a full-blown fight and argument as the film's on, bipping at each other about, like, I don't know, a drink. Oh, you doing it? Oh my God, shut up, it's so embarrassing. Oh my God, everyone can hear you. Oh, I'm not staying here. I was just like, girly, what are we doing here? Like, get a grip of yourself. The granny just ups herself and leaves. She's like, I'm leaving, I'm not staying here. Not staying with you lot. I thought, oh, we're having a domestic. Okay. She just storms down the stairs, and as she's storming down the stairs, she's just grumbling to herself for the whole cinema to hear. And it's like, oh my God, just leave. I can actually tell that the grandkids are like low-key so embarrassed, which fair, but also no offense, they were equally just as bad, because even after she went, they were still just whispering quite loudly to each other and talking shit about her or God knows what. And it's like, guys, just give it a rest. She's obviously decided to leave. Just watch the film. So I'm just thinking, oh my God, where is the decorum? Where is the etiquette? Carry on watching the film. About 10 minutes later, she returns. I think, oh, here we go, round 2. I think the woman might have had a little calm down moment. She brings back them a hot chocolate. The granddaughter's having none of it. She's like, I don't want hot chocolate, not from you. I think that the grandson takes it. She takes the other one, and they still have a little bit of a grumble and a moan, and they continue to talk out very loud. And I'm just like, oh my God, what is actually wrong with people? And it's the same, you get it in theatres, people who are obviously on their phones, and you're told like 1,000 times, like, don't record, get off. And to be fair, the ushers in theatres are on that shit, which I do appreciate. And they will come up and like interrupt you and be like, put your phone away, even if it means like making noise amongst people. And it's just like, what has happened to people? What has happened to like, I am truly perplexed each day, and I'm convinced that it has gotten worse. Like, I just don't know if I pay more attention to it. I say this quite a lot about like people's general social skills since pandemic days. Like, that has gone down the drain tenfold. And it's like people just don't give a shit anymore. People's inhibitions are gone. There's no filters. It's quite scary. And like, don't get me wrong. In some ways, I'm like, honestly, ain't real. The world's gone to shit. Who bloody cares anymore? But come on, guys. Come the fuck on. It's too much. It's too much. When we're all out here working hard, getting paid shit all, everything's going up in flames. The last thing we need is to like turn on each other. You know what I mean? Let's not all aggravate or irritate each other more than we need to in this life. And how about sometimes we just like follow the rules? You know? Like I'm all for breaking a rule or two, but it's just unacceptable behaviour. And that also, just to round off my little rant corner here, this goes into kids and young people as well. And not to sound like, oh my God, I'm a 30-year-old granny, ew, snotty kids, whatever. I love kids, okay? I've got a beautiful little niece. She's my absolute whole world. I think kids can be really cute and delightful. And I think one day maybe I'll have a family. I'm not sure on that yet. We'll save that for another episode. However, teenagers, as we all know, we were all teens once. Different beast, different kind of beast. But let me tell you, yeah, even when I was a teenager, we were all a bit silly as teens. We probably all do silly things and we're loud and annoying. But one thing that I personally was never as a teen was just disrespectful and rude, especially to like older people. Like, respect your elders is really what I was personally taught. Like, you don't go chopsing off to adults, grown adults, or teachers or anything like that. And the audacity, the nerve, the gumption of some of these kids, I will say mainly boys, unfortunately, young boys, young teen boys. It's getting out of hand, guys. It is getting out of hand. I've had a few examples as of late that are just, again, driving me nuts. Like, in some senses, I do actually feel, I think I've said this before in a pod, like, I feel bad for young people in many ways, right? Youth unemployment through the roof. Lots of people out of education. There's not exactly a massive amount of prospects for young people in certain backgrounds, and I feel for them. With all the austerity that we had under the Tories and all the councils slashing services and community centres disappearing, I get that there's unfortunately a lot of disenfranchised young people. And also, I mean, let's not even talk about the manosphere of it all, young men in particular, how like scarily influenced they're all being under social media. Did a whole episode on that a while back about the manosphere, so won't go into a full dive about that, but I get it, okay? I get that boys in particular, young boys, they are disenfranchised. They are probably very poorly influenced, a lot of them. And, they have to be acting out for a reason. Like, it makes me actually kind of sad for them, right? However, I do think parenting goes a long way. And I don't know in what world kids think is acceptable to like torment adults. I have a lovely park across the way from me, which I sometimes go for a little walk around. When we had a nice little sunny week the other week, I thought, we'll go for a little walk after work. Work's been a bit stressful again. Let me just get out to the fresh air. It's sunny, it's dry. I like my little loop around the park. I find my little bench spot sometimes at like the end of my walk where I can just have a little sit, take in the sounds of the birds, the sounds of nature, the kids playing in the park. And it's just a moment of peace, a moment of peace. So I sat there minding my own business. And yeah, you get a lot of kids go around the park, fine. I actually happened to have my earphones in. I think I might have been listening to a podcast or something. These two little snot rad kids, these young boys, they honest to God were probably no more than like 11 or 12 years old. I can see them sort of circling around the back of me, and I'm just not like obviously giving them the attention they're looking for. They're just being like little wind-ups or whatever. I can hear them like chanting things. I'm literally truly not listening because I literally have earphones in and it's kind of drowning out whatever they're saying. They're no doubt probably just like saying something like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like, I've heard it all. They're probably just like insulting me in some way. I'm a woman. I'm a fat girl. Oh. It's the same old tropes. What's new? Anyway, choose to tune it out. But you look over your shoulder and in the corner of your eye, like to just what's going on here. And I'm trying my best to just don't give it the attention, just ignore it. They'll get bored, they'll move on to someone else. And then this little Betty snot rag, he literally, I didn't react to it, but he came right up to my ear. He like comes from behind, again, just like in my personal space, and he shouted something. He just like screamed and like like right in my ear, and then he like runs away, and they're all just laughing, and he keeps like coming back and doing that, and I'm like, oh, it's just not even funny. It's not even like a ha he interact with the teen. Oh, you're such a joker. No, you can tell there is almost like this viciousness behind it. I know that sounds really weird to say, but there's like this almost like a threatening feeling that comes from that type of behaviour. And I don't know if that is just maybe something that I feel like intrinsically within me as a woman. Probably, if I was to be like honest, if I think about just childhood, and we've all got like our internal traumas and things we think of when we were younger, when kids used to pick on you and bully you. Like, it's a very reminiscent feeling of like just the horrible kids at school like tormenting you. And it was just a really awful feeling. And I was like, this is horrible. Like, I'm a fucking 32-year-old grown woman with free will who's coming out to enjoy her local neighbourhood in my lovely park and to sit on a bench to try and enjoy a moment of peace. And I am being harangued and harassed by two little 12-year-old boys who I'm not giving any attention to. I haven't said nothing or looked at them. And they're just screaming in the back of my ear. So much so that I feel the need to literally get up and leave the situation. Because it's like actually making me feel quite uncomfortable. And it's just like, what a horrible way to make people feel. And they do that a lot. I've had that literally happen to me also when I was on the tram once. Again, a bunch of like small little teeny boys screaming in my ear. It happens a lot and it really irritates me. What also irritates me is the lack of action from people around you. When that happened to me on the tram, like sometime last year or so, there was a grown man. I mean, a lot of people on the tram, but specifically grown men. Watching that happen, I ended up moving seats and going further down. I happened to go behind to an empty seat that was behind this guy who I could see was looking over. He then had the nerve to say, "Oh, I thought you were never going to move away from them." I'm so sorry, sir. You're the grown man who probably could have stepped in seeing a younger woman being harassed by a group of teenage boys. Where were you in the moment to maybe help or support or step in and say, "Hey, boys, leave that woman alone. What do you think you're doing?" Instead, he sits back, watches the whole thing unfold, and then has the nerve to say, "Oh, that was funny, wasn't it?" Oh, sorry, I'm in such a rant mode today, but there's so much wrong with the world. It's crazy. It's just crazy work, and I'm just absolutely perplexed and baffled. And then going back to the young people again, when I was in Spain a few weeks ago on my holidays, I went out to the supermarket, like a little 10-minute walk away from my hotel. It happens to go through these like back streets of like a neighbourhood where there's a school. Again, minding my own business, just walking past the school, I can hear young teenage boys like shouting. I obviously don't know what they're saying because they're speaking in Spanish, but they're shouting, they're doing things in the window because it's like one of these 2-story building things where they must have like classrooms on the top level. And I walk past, I obviously don't look at them, nothing. And then I hear an object thrown like inches behind me, probably like a pen or a rubber or something. And they're laughing, they're screaming. But like, what? Sorry, what do you mean we're just acceptably throwing items now at just innocent women who are walking? What is wrong with you? Literally, what is wrong with you? Where are the teachers in those moments? They literally sat in a classroom, no doubt. Where's the teacher saying, "Boys, get out the window"? You don't throw objects at random people, especially women, walking by minding their own business. Like, hello! It's absolutely feral out there, guys. I don't know what is happening to humans or humanity. And it can feel very difficult in this world sometimes to remain patient when you just come across so many of these type of behaviours. And I try and think back to the conversation I was having with Kate actually on the pod a few episodes ago, where she was talking about her experience running the Manchester Marathon and actually how much that like instilled her faith in humans again, of like people being supportive and giving out sweets and all this stuff. And I'm like, I gotta find some more of that. Not saying I'm about to bloody start running a marathon because it's not for me, but where are the good humans, guys? Are you out there? I know for a fact that anyone listening to the Weekly Wigs, you're all in my good humans list because you're in this gang. So I do appreciate and love you. But I just wish we could see a bit more kind behaviour displayed out in public sometimes, because I don't know if it's just something about me being in a city or city life and there's just a bit more that goes on in cities, but I sometimes struggle to find examples in society of like lovely, kind behaviour. I just wish there was more of it. And I guess more so, I wish there was more of it in young people, because it's just so sad to see how they behave. Probably not just against like grown adults, but even amongst each other. I can't imagine what it must be like at a school setting. I mean, I know kids are kids and kids are always picking on other kids and it's just unfortunately inevitable. But come on, we just need a bit of love in this world. Do you know what I feel like right now? I literally feel like that character in Miss Congeniality, the friend who's like, "I just want world peace and like us all to get along." Literally, please. So there we go. That was quite a lengthy rant corner. Thank you for joining me on this rant corner. If you've got anything to rant about, I would actually love to know. Maybe we can get this going. Let's get some viewer rants. Maybe I can go through like your dilemmas or some situations that you've experienced as of late. Make sure to email me on the Weekly Wigs podcast email. It is in the bio. All my links. You can even just DM me on Insta, TikTok, all that kind of stuff. Please also make sure that you are subscribed to all these channels, whatever you're listening on, whether it's Spotify, Apple or YouTube. Please make sure to hit that follow and subscribe button because I really want to get the channels soaring, baby. So please do that. Would love you greatly. So moving on then from Rant Corner, let's just quickly touch on Culture Corner. I feel like I'm kind of doing a bit of a shit sandwich this episode. We've had like our little rant. I'm going to just have a quick touch on Culture Corner, which is a bit more light and relief. And then I do actually really need to get into Politics Corner today because there's some stuff and some topics I want to get into, specifically around, which you may already notice, I'm wearing my Protect the Doll shirt today, very aptly, because we have got some sort of updates that happened recently with the sort of transgender definition of sex ruling that happened in the UK. So I just want to get into that a bit in a sec. But let me just touch on Culture Corner. One thing that I've literally just freshly hot off the press, recording this on a Friday night. Headlines in Culture Corner is Miss Susan Boyle, Britain's Got Talent extraordinaire. I mean, if you don't know who Susan Boyle is, you're living under a rock. She's like an iconic name in culture. Obviously, she was very famously propelled to stardom and fame with her famous Britain's Got Talent audition back in, God, I don't know, what was it, 2008, 2009, back in the Britain's Got Talent heyday. Everybody doubted our girl Susan because she didn't fit the traditional, like, singer look or whatever. She obviously had the voice of an angel, very operatic. She's gone on for many years since, famed queen. I think she is very much like a gay icon. She's just like this tiny little Scottish lady who is just, it's just so funny that she has like the power and the stardom that she does, and it's just, it doesn't like match what her life is as well, because I swear she just lives like a regularly normal life just in a little village in Scotland. Like, I don't think she's ever left. She's just little Sue, you know? Anyway, Susan Boyle, now furthermore known as Mary J. Boyle. I'm going to have to check the images in here. I am gagged. Okay, I'm simply sat, as the kids would say. I am sat. Because Miss Gag Tina, Susan Boyle, she's teasing a new project, right? I mean, look, with all due respect, I don't listen to Susan Boyle's music. I feel like her audience members are perhaps of the older generation because it's like more classical, operatic music, but thoroughly respect her talent. Anyway, she's just come out with this total new image, which is everyone is talking about it, I myself included. Miss Susan Boyle has come out with like this blonde bob look. She's giving like Kardashian. She's walking in a fur coat and a tracky matching. She's giving like diva bitch energy, and I did not have this on my bingo card whatsoever. And she's like teasing something coming up very soon. So Miss Susan Boyle is giving Bob Queen. People are now dubbing her as Mary J. Bob. Or Mary J. Bob. Mary J. Boyle, sorry. Mary J. Bob's not about him. It's just like really left field. So I'm deeply intrigued to see how that's going to unfold. So stick a pin in that one and we'll revisit Miss Susan Boyle's comeback, whatever it may be. Maybe it's not, like, it could be something completely unrelated and we just don't know. It could, actually no, I think it is a song. I swear she said there was a name of the song coming out soon. So we're going to have to stay tuned. I'm deeply invested in this. Watch Susan Boyle just absolutely rip a dance routine to shreds. Watch it come out with like EDM. She's going to do like a Brat Challa on us. It's Brat Baby. She's going to like do a duo with fucking Charlie XCX. Like, I'm ready for it to unfold. This is your era, Susan Boyle, and it's time to step in it. Maybe she'll have like a collab with Zara. I mean, Zara Larsson is woman of the moment right now, so that would like be a great collab. Speaking of Zara Larsson, did watch a little bit of her over the weekend on Radio 1's Big Weekend. That happened over the bank holidays. She's always a vibe, Miss Zara Larsson. I just love that she's having such a moment right now. Like, Midnight Sun is obviously a great song. That whole album is like summer bops and vibes. So living for Miss Zara. Love the whole Lush Life dance thing that she does. It's great. So I enjoyed watching her. And then some kind of new music, I guess, to put you on. It is New Music Friday after all today while I'm recording. We've got a Lily Allen remix release with Jade Thirlwall from Little Mix. It's a very good song. It's off her It's the song that was off her West End Girl album called Beg For You. Is it Beg For You or Beg For Me? I'm getting that wrong now. One of them. Anyway, Jade's hopped on a remix. It's great. It's a great time. So chuck that on your playlist would be my recommendations. I'm actually going to see West End Girl live, Miss Lily Allen, in Manchester in maybe 2 or 3 weeks. She's coming like midway through June. So looking forward to that. I'll have to give you a cheeky little review once I've seen that. But that's pretty much what I got going on in Culture Corner. I'm not going to lie. I feel like these days I'm finding it quite hard to like rack up my knowledge in Culture Corner because I'm so often just busy and stressed with work and working on the pod and creating my TikTok content. Little plug, please go follow my page. Usernames everywhere and anywhere. I'm just a bloody busy gal. My life is pretty much work life, pod life, the minuscule fraction of social life where I can find it or find the energy to do it. And then any like general spare time I have, I try my best to just catch up with like my news podcasts and the rest is politics and all this stuff. So yeah, it's a little bit hard to get on top of all the culture, but I think I've kind of touched on some of the main stuff that's been going on this week. So, swiftly taking us on then into our final little segment for today, which is Politics Corner. A lot of stuff going on. I mean, I often obviously cover most things that are happening in the UK. I mean, the USA, do I even need to go there? It's the same old shit show every day in the USA. I think the latest is that Trump is still deranged. There's all this back and forth still going on with like this war with Iran. It's a never-ending cycle that will probably never end for like the next 4 years. Every 5 seconds we hear the words, oh, there's a ceasefire deal, there's a deal, there's a deal, there's a deal. Deal or no deal, Noel Edmonds says no deal. There is literally never a deal. So that'll probably just tit for tat go on for many years. So I feel like I'm at a point now with all the Trump America stuff where I've really tuned out to it. Like, I'm obviously still locked in and like keeping aware of things, but a lot of it is just very repetitive and nothing's really changing. Like, nothing's actually happening. So until there's any real significant updates or there really is an end to this war or whatever, then I can't say it's piquing my interest as of right now. Whereas stuff that's going on in the UK, obviously it's always going to be a bit more relevant to my life anyway, living in the UK, but there's just been so much happening in the UK. I mean, obviously, I think I spoke about it in a previous episode. Was it the last episode, actually? I think I went into a bit of a deep dive on, like, the situation with the council election. Yeah, I did do that. So go back an episode to listen to all that. But we've obviously had a big shake-up with the council elections that took place. Reform this, reform that. Bloody Nigel Farage. Oh, by the way, I'm giggling. Your gal's gone a little bit viral. Well, I wouldn't say viral. Viral is usually like thousands and thousands of views. But one of the clips that I uploaded to my TikTok from this podcast about my Nigel Farage chat last week has been picked up by many a Reform voter. Oh, she's getting trolled in the comments. I actually just need to talk about the fact that I think I have spoken about this before. TikTok and it's sort of, what do you call it? Like, it's regulating systems. It's safety features, apparently. All this stuff where you can like report people for like harassment and bullying, and people should be obviously reprimanded or blocked or taken off these sites. But of course, none of that's ever happening on TikTok because it's run by bloody AI bots and useless technology, which deems everything to be fully acceptable, which is why you see obviously such horrendous things in comment sections and all of it on socials. TikTok's a big cesspit for awful comment sections, to be honest. I feel like that's another debate for another day, but there was some message. I think it's gone now because I might have blocked it, so I can't see where it is. But I did submit a little report because someone off the back of that video was just ranting and raving in my DMs about like, you're stupid, you're this, and blah, blah, blah. Because obviously they're a reformer and they don't like the fact that I criticise Nigel Farage. And it's like straight up just harassment and like, you're not, like, you shouldn't be allowed to send those things, obviously, to people's messages. So I reported it. Of course, the report came back and said, no wrongdoing found. Case closed. Thank you. Like, honest to God, TikTok's wild. Anyway, I digress. Why am I talking about this? Oh, yeah. So, lots going on, obviously, with Farage, Reform, a lot of changes, a lot of threats, shall we say, in my opinion. Very sort of big threat, I would argue, to like just the general democracy and people's rights in the UK. We're seeing this real big rise of far-right ideology with Nigel Farage and Reform. There's a lot of rhetoric and narrative over immigration and we gotta get rid of the immigrants. I won't again go into the background of all that because by now, if you've been following this pod, you know the deal. There's whole episodes on it. Go check them out. But there's just this division. There's just this really weird division and crazy shift in energy amongst just people and humans in the UK. People are very disenfranchised again. There's a lot of anger in this country for, some of it valid, various reasons. We're all struggling economically, and there's obviously a lot of poor management, to be perfectly honest, by the current government of fixing a lot of things. But what I find the sad result of it is that instead of finding a unifying voice to fix these issues and to make us all feel hopeful again, we just don't have leadership. We don't have hope. We don't have faith in anything that these politicians are trying to deliver. I mean, when do we ever, quite frankly, because politicians, unfortunately, don't hold the best record for that. But we try, we hope. And there's a lot of talk, obviously, about Andy Burnham potentially being the next PM. And I feel very torn in general with the current political sphere of the UK. But the one issue that is a consistent talking point in the UK, and it's a fairly new talking point, I would say. And again, I have done full episode on this about trans rights and the threat to trans rights. And we've had some updates as of late, and I just kind of want to get into them a little bit. I mean, as usual, I'm not pleased with these updates because otherwise I wouldn't be talking about them. If I ever had positive updates to bring, I would certainly be talking about them. But there's just craziness going on, and I just feel like I want to inform people. If you're not aware, on the Weekly Wigs, we are here to try and learn sometimes and critically think. I think it's important to share the knowledge whenever I'm talking about this stuff, try and back it up with some facts and some sources, and just keeping things on lock, I want to keep an eye on things, just monitor them. And it's good to be able to come back and talk through progress, sometimes not so much progress, so we can mobilise when the time is needed. Because I gotta be honest, these days I do feel like we are just in a constant mobilization state. I'm feeling, as someone who's obviously fairly interested in activism and cares about these topics and situations, I'm not very passive in it. I'm not somebody who just reads a headline and doesn't ever think about it again. I care about these things, I genuinely do, because I just care about human rights. I don't know, I think that's pretty normal. But I take an interest in it. And so I guess as part of my platform, my podcast, I like to use that as an opportunity to talk about it. And even if it is just to try and talk about it out loud, to understand it, because I don't always know every single fact. I'm not a journalist, I'm not a news source, but it's good to just debate these things and to try and learn as we go. So as we know, back in 2025, there was this big sort of significant ruling in the UK from the Supreme Court, which is all to do with what constitutes biological sex, or how do we define a man and a woman. Again, I'm not going to go into a massive rabbit hole about that whole thing because I did an episode on it. Go check it out. But essentially, in sort of the last year since that happened, there's been some developments and some more recent developments. So let me just go through my notes here and some stuff that I've got online. So main development is in the last month, the UK government formally laid out the updated Equality and Human Rights Commission draft code of practice before Parliament on the 21st of May 2026. So it's just in the last week. This follows the 2025 UK Supreme Court ruling in For Women Scotland versus Scottish Ministers, which said that sex in the Equality Act refers to biological sex for Equality Act purposes. Now, we don't even need to get into my opinion on what we think about that entire Supreme Court ruling because I've stated it on the podcast before, but I think that whole thing is deeply flawed, and how it still has even been passed is kind of beyond me, because making such huge rash decisions like this without real thought and also without involvement of trans representatives in that entire case is madness, in my opinion. I think it's really sad and wrong that even passed in the first place, but we can debate that another time because it is what it is now. That ruling has happened and obviously the UK government are acting upon it. So here's the specific breakdown of what changed and what it means in practice. So what was actually published? So the government published the updated draft statutory code of practice, an equality impact assessment and supporting ministerial statements. The code applies to services, public bodies, associations and employers interpreting the Equality Act obligations. The biggest practical changes in the updated guidance say woman, man and sex in the Equality Act means biological sex. A gender recognition certificate does not change sex for Equality Act interpretation. Single-sex services can lawfully exclude trans people where it is a disproportionate means of achieving aims like privacy, dignity, safety, or trauma protection. Admitting a trans person to a legally single-sex service may affect whether that service still counts as a single sex under the Act. Examples specifically discussed in reporting and guidance include toilets, changing rooms, hospital wards, prisons, and sports settings. Important nuance people are missing. The update code is not a total ban on trans exclusion. Well, that's to be questioned. The guidance also says trans people still retain protection under the gender reassignment characteristic in the Equality Act. Blanket exclusion policies may still be unlawful if disproportionate, and organisations should consider alternative or mixed-sex / gender-neutral facilities where practical. In many ordinary situations, providers are not expected to challenge someone's sex directly. Now, this is where I take issue with this, okay? Everyone's very quick to say, yeah, but it's not discriminating people. It's not we're not just banning trans people. Of course we're not. And Labour stands there and they say, no. We're not doing that, of course we're not. And they'll harp about the message that, a trans woman facing discrimination or harassment just because she's trans, we don't stand for that. That can actually bring upon someone a gender reassignment discrimination claim. We don't agree with harassment, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, it's all well and good saying that you're all for equality and you don't agree with this. But I'm afraid the rules you've created, the law you've drafted, is actively doing that, whether you like it or not. Saying things like, organisations should consider alternative or mixed. How about if we really have to have this in writing and in law? How about organisations have to, not just should consider? What are you actually going to be doing to enforce that? How are you going to enforce every single establishment, public body, workplace? How are you going to force and make sure that there are gender neutral options for every person? I mean, my general personal opinion in the first place is I don't know what the issue is, especially when it comes to bathrooms. I personally am someone that does not agree with this stance about we must protect single sex spaces, in the sense that I don't like how it's been framed all this time that specifically trans women are a threat in those spaces. I don't like that notion. I don't agree with it. That is a narrative and a trope that I believe has got us to this place in the first place, this perceived threat that single-sex spaces like a women's toilet cannot allow trans women in because they are biologically born a male. I mean, the whole thing is just, it really irritates me, because why are we not talking about the fact that we know that the biggest threat to women in particular are cisgendered males? Cisgendered males. More often, your partners, your husbands, in your own household. A trans woman, and by the way, trans woman is a woman. That is what we should be accepting in this society, but people won't do it. First of all, makes up a minuscule amount of the population in general. Why there's all this absolute hoo-ha and faff over such a small group of people is beyond me anyway. Secondly, there is literally no recorded incident. There's no evidence of there being that threat from a trans woman specifically. Also, there never seems to be any discussion point over trans men. What about the rules for trans men? Are they not allowed in a men's bath? It's just so backwards and so targeted, which is what baffles me. The point is that the threat does not exist. Okay, I'm sorry, it just doesn't. And again, it's the same in sports. I've done a whole segment on that on my trans debate episode, where it's they all like to say, yeah, but it's unfair and trans women are taking away people's They're not doing it. They're such a small... Anyway. Sorry, I just get really riled up with this stuff, because it's just the threat in the first place. Basically, what I'm saying is just not a threat in the first place. So the fact that we even have to move mountains to even make different spaces, I just think is unfair. I don't have an issue with a trans woman going into a women's bathroom. For years and years, when we go to public toilets, for example, in a train station or an airport, we are very used to, as a society, of seeing signs that will say, just so you're aware, there may be a male cleaning attendant that will frequently come into these bathrooms. We don't bat an eyelid at that. We don't take heed of it. If these activists and these TERFs, quite frankly, had such an issue with that, I think they would have flagged it by now. We can't be having male cleaning assistants in here. This is a single-sex space. No. When has that ever happened? It hasn't, because all of a sudden, because someone is a trans person, and you're not used to someone looking a bit different to you or not fitting the norm, then you choose to actively discriminate those people. And it's so backwards. Like, the logic is just so backwards to me. I'm of the opinion that we just shouldn't be don't get me wrong. I think if you want to have I think gender neutral spaces are great. And I think in a dream world, if everywhere just had a gender neutral toilet, that would honestly probably get rid of all of this shit, right? Everyone can exist everywhere at any time. And that I have no issue with. So in theory and in practice, it's great that they say that, you should consider that. But the reality of that in practice, and like I said, trying to enforce that is a very different thing. And if you're not actually going to make it like a legal requirement or enforce companies or public spaces to actually make those spaces, then you are, quite frankly, discriminating trans people. You cannot expect a trans woman to feel safe and included by having to go into the male bathroom. You just can't. Like, you don't live that life. You don't understand the fear and persecution that can come from a trans woman entering a male bathroom. And quite frankly, more of a threat in there than there is in the women's toilets. And quite frankly, the only other viable option being for someone is to just use like the disabled toilet, which also shouldn't be like a normalized thing. Like, I'm glad that they exist for trans people in the interim. At least there's something for those that may not feel safe. Because now the sad thing is that trans women probably also don't even feel safe in women's toilets because of the fact, thankfully, I would say not a very large proportion, but there are women out there who are very discriminative, like the J.K. Rowlings and the TERFs of the world, the people who have made this happen in the first place. They will argue, you shouldn't be in here, my child's unsafe. And the thing is, what those women don't realise, hilariously, is that by doing all of this and by taking this action, you are actually actively discriminating cisgendered women. God forbid a cisgendered woman doesn't actually fit a feminine look and may look slightly more masculine. Who knows? You're now setting this precedent of question. Is that a trans man? Is that a trans woman? Is that a trans person? Oh, should they be in here? What if I'm just a cisgendered biological woman and I just don't look like a female? That can happen too. Like, you're literally discriminating yourself. It's crazy work. I just don't think it's right. Number one, that we should even be doing this in the first place. I think the whole thing's a farce. Either just do away with all gender toilets and make every single toilet in the world just gender neutral and we can all get on with our lives and never have to debate this again. Or just allow trans women to go into women's bathroom and trans men to go into men's bathroom and mind your damn business and carry on with your life. That'll be my personal choice. But no, we cannot do that because we cannot live in peace and harmony together. So that is what I really take heed with this legal ruling and all this, this draft code. Like, it should. The semi-good news is that this current update and this like drafted code is there to be scrutinised, I think, for like, what is it, like a period of 60 days? There's like a certain period where it's put before Parliament so that MPs and people can question it and, scrutinise it before it's like fully put to law, essentially. And it should be scrutinised because there is still so much wrong with it. I just think we have to really question all of these big choices before we just put them into law and start really affecting people's lives, because it does affect people's lives. Yeah, okay, it's not a large population of people, but they're still people and they still deserve to have the same rights and also to not be questioned. And unfortunately, this is what this kind of stuff does. It gives people a precedent to think it's acceptable. Like, you're not allowed in here. You know the rules. You're not a biological. The whole thing is truly exclusionary. And they try and claim that it's all for trans. It's not. Everything you claim is inclusionary is simply not. And it's all good telling organisations that you should make sure you consider this. And, it is still right that they get their protected rights under the Equality Act. But how are the things that you've put in place helping any of that? They're simply not. Real world impact already appearing. So within days of this publication of the new code that's being drafted, or the draft code, local authorities and NHS bodies have started reviewing toilet and changing policies. Political figures like Andy Burnham have publicly shifted towards accepting the guidance, which, if I'm being honest, I learned this for the first time today, and this alarms me. This is something that really makes me think about my choices and who I'm going to vote for next, because obviously he's potentially on path to be the next Prime Minister, right? And there's a lot I do like about Andy Burnham, but there's a lot that I question, like this stance, because Andy Burnham was very, famously pro-trans to the gods in the past. Like, he's actually always questioned any of this and has often criticised this exclusionary sort of behaviour. And now he's taken a very different shift in accepting that, we have to accept the biological ruling. And it's like, this is exactly what Keir Starmer did as well. And it's like the shift and the general shift of the Labour Party, which I just personally don't agree with. So I feel deeply concerned if this is his stance, because in comparison, the Green Party with like Zach Polanski take a very different stance, which I personally agree with, which is to be very strongly pro-trans. One of the Green MPs, Sian Berry, she actually recently came out with a statement after this guidance was published saying that trans people face real fear of being excluded from essential services and public spaces. She said that the guidance leaves organisations in a huge legal minefield and that Parliament should create clear and equal rights for all. Zach Polanski, the Green leader, he's kind of sort of come up with a similar stance in that he's obviously very pro-trans rights. Following the recent guidance, I think he reposted something on his socials about support for sort of legal challenges against this. And he's also backed something called the Good Law Project for their appeal efforts. I think the Good Law Project is sort of like this organisation that brings together like legal action, investigation and campaigners to sort of fight for a fairer future. It exists to hold power to account. And do you know what? Funny enough, I went on their website and I read an interesting article, and this kind of honestly says it all, just the corrupt nature of it all. They reported that the EHRC, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, who have obviously played a part in this code of ethics or whatever, they have appointed a barrister called Alistair Henderson as the interim chair of the Scotland Committee, despite the fact that he has links to groups opposing the rights of women and LGBTQ plus people. Henderson served on the EHRC, which laid their revised guidance on how organisations should approach trans inclusion. He faced criticism in 2020 for liking and sharing posts criticising Black Lives Matter. What does that say to you? As well as calling the words misogynist and homophobe highly ideological propaganda terms. Crazy work. Spent 8 months as deputy chair in 2023. Between 2016 and 2021, Henderson was also the director of the Lawyers Christian Fellowship, which was partnered with Alliance Defending Freedom. Ooh, that sounds about right. A US Christian right group, which was central in overturning abortion rights in the US. That's a whole other thing we got to talk about. I've been listening to my Guilty Feminist podcast today. I didn't even know this was a thing. I mean, I know about the ADF. They are quite the threat to democracy in this country, let me tell you. This is a US-based conservative advocacy group, okay? It's absolutely wild that an American-based group that isn't, they're not a political group. They're just this sort of conservative advocacy group, right? Foreign interference? Why are they interested in what we're doing in the UK? What's it got to do with you, hun? How about you mind your business and go fix what's happening in your own country? Anyway, ADF, International Alliance Defending Freedom. They have threatened. This is the craziest news I've learned this year. Their MO, okay, in general, this is a very like pro-Christian, anti-abortion, anti-gay rights. That is their whole belief. They want to, and they are funneling millions. They have a lot of money. This is why Roe versus Wade was overturned in America. This is why we are regressing in so many ways. And they are infiltrating their way very powerfully into governments to make these changes. And they are a serious threat to the UK because they have operations here. Like, they've had them in place for many a year, which is, honest to God, why we're in the place we're at now. This is why we're discussing and seeing changes with trans rights. And it begins with trans people. It filters down to the rest of us. Women, watch out, because it's us next. Anyway, this group, right, because they have so much money, they throw the kitchen sink at it. And what they've been doing recently is they've been throwing, essentially, like, lawsuits and legal action against many UK companies and federations, more specifically like sports federations, threatening and claiming that their inclusion policies are violating the Equality Act. So let me just go through the facts here, okay? ADF threatens Parkrun. So Parkrun, you've probably heard of Parkrun. It's literally just people running in a park. It's what it says on the tin. It's like people going for little 5Ks, little like charitable, for fun organisation. It's not competitive sports. It's like a little bit like how people do the Race for Life for cancer research or whatever. It's an organisation. It happens to like have a company behind it, right? And the ADF is trying to literally actively sue Parkrun because they claim that their policy, their inclusion policy, violates the Equality Act and fails to protect fairness and safety for women and girls. They claim the policy ignores a recent UK Supreme Court ruling that mandated sex-based exclusions must be based on biological sex. Parkrun is one of 10 UK sports organisations, including Swim England and the Football Association of Wales. Whoa, shout out my FAWs, who have been sent formal legal letters warning of immediate and substantial legal liability. So they just think by threatening and trying to sue these companies that they're going to get their way, basically. Parkrun's stance: Parkrun maintains that as a non-competitive, community-focused health charity, it prioritises inclusivity and allows people to identify in the way they feel most comfortable. I mean, this is just insanity, and how more people don't know about this alarms me, which is why I want to talk about it today, because, guys, we gotta lock in. Parkrun's being sued by an American Christian conservative group who are being funneled by corrupt billionaires who are trying to push this aggressively religious stance into our country. They're trying to impact people's everyday rights and lives because of what they believe in. It's insanity. And you're coming after a charity that does parkruns and people going on jogs. Honest to God, you can't make it up. Good news is that you can write to your MP about this, and there is actually loads of petitions to Parliament to get this, sorted out. There's a website here called protectparkrun.uk. I'll put all these links in my bio, so if you want to follow the resources, then do so. And I would probably encourage that you sign up to these petitions. American anti-abortion, that's the other thing, they're anti-abortion as well. American anti-abortion campaigners Alliance Defending Freedom have now broken cover in the UK to threaten Parkrun with a lawsuit for letting trans people take part as themselves. Parkruns are proudly welcoming community events designed to get people moving, and inclusive spaces like this need protecting. Yes, they do. The ADF campaign against abortion rights, gay marriage, and anti-discrimination legislation with a budget of millions. They have been active in the UK for a while, but now feel emboldened to openly back legal threats over trans inclusion. They think we will let it happen. Anti-rights movements won't stop with trans people, and we must hold back the tide. Yes! Say it louder! Protect Parkrun. These people have articulated everything I've just been ranting about for the last 20 minutes. And this is really what we got to lock into. We can't allow these extreme far right threats. And it's the same with Farage and Reform. This is what they want to do. They want to reverse our rights. And we are already historically living in real time of this happening to trans people. And I don't care how Labour tried to spin it and how much they tried to claim, oh no, we're not, they're still protected under the Equality Act. Let's just not even go there. Let's not even go there. This threat is insane. It's just nobody's alarmed about it. And I need people to be more concerned about this because it's wrong. It's so wrong. This article goes on to say, we already saw the Women's Institute and Girl Guiding feel forced against their will to kick trans people out or risk expensive litigation, causing groups to close and volunteers to quit. I mean, if I'm being honest, I do sometimes... These institutions like Women's Institute and Girl Guiding, I understand it's a rock between a hard place, and they are not organisations that are quite as large in that they could probably unfortunately protect themselves from these millions and millions of dollars that come from people like the ADF. So I get that sometimes they probably feel pressured that they have to take these crappy stances to just protect themselves and what used to be their legacy. And it's unfortunately, as frustrating as it is, a lot of it can sometimes just come down to the money and the politics of it all. And there's that side of things. But then I do also sometimes think, well, if you took that stance, though, with everything, and you just allowed the bullies to beat you down and you didn't fight back against what you really care for, then is there a point? You know what I mean? Actually stand on your morals. And we've seen this with Women's Institute and Girl Guide, and they come out with statements and they say, we really don't want to actually have to do this, and we're sorry that this is causing this and this, but we have to follow the law. Well, it's not actually the law, is it? So you don't actually have to do it if you don't want to. You don't have to cower down. but they do. And it's like, anyway, that whole thing's just a bit of a side tangent. We think this Labour government needs to act, otherwise lawfare like this will continue. Amen. Trans Plus Solidarity Alliance recently brought together a coalition of over 140 feminists and LGBTQ plus organisations to call out for our equalities laws to better protect inclusive spaces like these. Will you join us and tell your MP to stand up against this kind of lawfare? Yeah, okay. So, guys, we got to mobilise. Weekly Wigs gang, it's time for us to act. It is time to sign these petitions. It's time to write to your MPs and say, hey, I'm really concerned about this and I want to know what you're doing about it, because we're actively excluding people and it's not cool. It's not cool. Going back to that whole thing about the EHRC and how you've got, they're appointing people into these structures that are part of the same machine. So that barrister, Alistair Henderson, now put in as an interim chair of the Scotland Committee of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, has a full history of involvement against, LGBTQ plus people, has links tying him to the ADF. Literally, this is another case, right? This isn't the first time. So just go back to this article. This isn't the first time the barrister has acted for people opposed to women's and LGBTQ plus rights during his time in the commission. In 2018, he represented a group challenging the UK's first safe buffer zone around a clinic providing abortion care in Ealing. 2 years later, Henderson represented Bell in her original case against the Tavistock Clinic, even though it was overturned. This marked the start of restrictions on gender-affirming care in the UK. And in 2022, he acted for a right-wing evangelical group against a Cambridge college, which declined to host a training course because of concerns about the group's opposition to same-sex marriage. So, look, this is just a small example of one man who's in a very powerful position on the Equality Rights Commission group, active history of defending people's cases where they don't agree with abortion, they don't agree with LGBTQ plus rights. This should be worrying people. And how these people are appointed as top barristers into this whole setup is how we're in this position. These are the real life examples of how this is happening. You know what I mean? This isn't just float about of nowhere. You've got a lot of people involved making these decisions. And for some baffling reason, the Labour government just backs it up. They go, yeah, sure, we agree with it. Go ahead. Yeah, here's the framework in. Happy days, head. Have a great day. It's disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful. And I'll never understand it to the end of time. Why are we doing this? Why? Tell them that it's human nature. Why? It's not human nature. Well, it is. It's crazy work, guys. But anyway, we got to remain positive and hopeful. We got to protect the dolls. I'm glad to see that there are organisations like Parkrun, standing up to say, hey, not cool, hens. We're not going to back down. You won't just sue us. I'm glad to see you've got organisations like the Good Law Project. We've got the podcasts like The Guilty Feminist that do a lot of meetups and episodes on all these important topics that are happening. And, listen, I get that for most people, you're probably completely clueless to all this stuff that goes on. And I get it. We're not all super involved in understanding about politics and all the things that are happening in this country. But I just think it's worth sharing the knowledge sometimes. And look, like I said at the start, I'm not a super expert, okay? I'm only basing off of what I'm learning as I go along and all these stories and all the sources that I use. I listen to politics podcasts, I would say fairly reputable news sources. I do my research. I'm looking at all these articles, all these stories. I'm reading policies and documents. I'm trying to educate myself as best as I know how to. I'm probably always going to miss things, but I think if you can find a starting point to even just learn about the surface level basics that are happening here, then knowledge is power. And I just think we should all be very aware of the serious threat that obviously is actively going on to trans people anyway. We know this, unfortunately, over the last year. The discrimination is active and there's already implements and things happening in organisations and, girl guiding, excluding trans girls and all of it. It's really sad. I think it's crazy that we're just doing this off the back of one Supreme Court case that was brought by a bunch of TERF activists from Scotland, and all of a sudden the whole world's on its head and we're all just meant to accept it. I don't accept it, and I hope that many of these MPs that claim to have a similar stance really do scrutinise this code of practice, this draft that they're putting before Parliament. So I am not 100% sure when that's happening. I think that will probably be happening over the course of the next few months, because obviously they've just recently published it. So it's still ongoing. So we're going to have to keep an eye out as to what happens there and as to whether there's any challenges. So stay tuned, I guess. Stay educated. I would recommend following some reputable news sources to keep on top of that, and I'll try my best to bring and deliver the goods here too. But anyway, I just felt kind of passionate about that today. It was on my mind. I will end on my message of protect the dolls. I do hope you have a marvellous week, whatever it is you end up doing. Thank you again to my new little mic for making its new appearance. And I will see you on the next one, girlies. Bye!